Hello, everybody, and welcome to Mego Museum's Mint Off Card. I'm Brian, your host, and this is a bit of a special episode of Mint Off Card. It's something a lot of people have been waiting for since the announcement of Mego returning. And of course, I am talking about the Mego World's Greatest Superheroes 50th anniversary figures that are now hitting retail and some e-tailers. Now, if you're a follower of this show, you know that I generally do not collect straight reproductions of figures I already have. I do, I'm more looking for what's new out there, and I had to make an exception for this, though. I mean, we're talking about the chairman of the board, the world's greatest superheroes. But I can't ignore that there are things in this that make it special, and if you had asked me a year ago, I said, I don't think they can get that done. So let's take a look at the packaging, and the packaging is a large part of why I think this is special. These are the most faithful reproductions of Mego's superhero boxes I've ever seen. I'd even go as far as to say is it's some of the best repro toy boxes I've ever seen done by a major company. First of all, they got the name back, World's Greatest Superheroes. That is an accomplishment on its own. I never thought Mego would get that done. If you know your Mego history, Marty Abrams actually trademarked World's Greatest Superheroes until DC and Marvel noticed and then made him sell it back to them for $1. To get this branding back and to get it back in time for the 50th anniversary is no small feat and needs to be recognized. And the credit to this goes to Mego's own Joel Rosenzweig for being very observant and patient. Because of the 50th anniversary, Mego was able to use that to work in their favor with the licensor, who became more pliable to some of their concepts. That meant not only packaging color choices, but also character art choices, which, if you followed the show, you have this thing called a style guide, and it tells you that no, Superman needs to be on a red card. But in this case, Mego's able to get away with not only yellow, but to copy the original Mego artwork. When these packages first were created by Licensing Corp of America, there was a fellow there by the name of Mike Jermakian. He didn't have stock art. So he hand drew each of the 4 original World's Greatest Superheroes packaging. Aquaman is famously a drawing of the Flash. The Batman and Robin are sourced from Carmen Infantino artwork. But the Superman still remains a giant mystery. Nobody knows exactly where it's from. We do kind of think it's Kurt Swan. So there is nothing in the DC style guide, even the retro stuff, that would look exactly like this because it's homegrown and it's exclusive to Mego. So that's something that I'm really amazed they got done, because that can be really difficult. There were some limits to what, they could do. So things like the header card that used to feature Marvel and, other characters like Tarzan had to be adapted to show just the DC characters. And this is actually original Mego World's Greatest Superhero art. It's from the 12-inch Canadian superhero figures. Now, if you're like me, you didn't love the pictures you saw with these things on hang tags. The Walmart stores especially seem to be hanging these on pegs. But I can fortunately say that they're really easy to remove, and I took all 3 off in less than a minute. So let's see how good they stack up next to an original vintage World's Greatest Superhero box. Now, some of the ones I have here aren't really based on the one we're talking about. However, the similarities outweigh the differences here. We live in the age of barcodes and safety warnings and websites that all have to be added on there. It still works. It still evoked that same kind of connection for me. I think anyone who grew up in the era would attest to this, that packaging kind of burned a hole in our brains, especially the Superman logo against that yellow, the Batman logo against pink, and the Robin with green. My brain is completely wired to say that's a good thing. And the best defense I can say about this is while I was filming this episode, the Superman box fell. 30 plus years of collecting just trains my brain to know if that's falling, it's not a good thing. So I think it really achieves its goal. I'm also really excited to see what they do with the characters that never were and how that packaging fits in next to this stuff. We'll talk about that in a future episode. I'd also like to bring up the fact that this is minor and I almost missed it. They are using the original Mego item numbers on these flaps. Now that is minutia, and I'm personally never been a packaging collector that moved the trademark, that sort of thing. But I know that's for some people. But even I've got to appreciate that nice little attention to detail that nobody was expecting being there. And it's also super geeky. And yes, there is a gold foil sticker on the bubble to give the significance of the Mego 50th anniversary. And, this is done for a number of reasons to make it more collectible. Personally, don't mind it. It differentiates the vintage from the original in a way that's not off-putting. It's attractive, and, Hasbro should take some notes from this. Now, there's a middle step I want to talk about now before we take them out of the box and do the silly montage. And that is how collector-friendly this all is. Really easy to open. You pull the figure out. The figures are just held in place with little plastic ties to the original cardboard backer. And there's something really great about this. It's sort of, it's easy to be collector-friendly, but you're getting the heroes posed, and what doesn't shatter that illusion that this is like vintage Mego is it doesn't have that inner plastic holder or anything like that. So it's a very little thing. It was probably a cost-cutting measure, but in my opinion, it adds value to the aesthetic. I was a little reluctant to take them out of the box because, when you're a kid, you spend the least amount of time with the toy in its box. You throw that box away. So that's a very short memory, but a lot of us have it. And that's why we try to recapture this, I guess. I'll stop with the psychoanalyst now, and let's take these out of the package, play some silly music, and see what they're made of, shall we? Hang tight. So just like the packaging, let's go over the figures themselves, and I'll happily give you my take on some of the elements and what I think really works on this. First of all, the boots. Mego tends to use a more like rubbery boot, even on reproduction sometimes. However, these are the original formula, so to speak, and yeah, they're that kind of hard plastic. They're not too thick. They feel pretty authentic. I've had a few reproductions over the years that didn't quite nail it, but these are darn close. The cape material is damn near perfect. It's a tactile thing you remember, and you hold it next to these. Really great job there. The fabric, I don't even know if you can get some of those fabrics that they originally did. They're not making knit pantsuits like they used to. So it seems that Mego searched for the best alternative to try and simulate that look. The threads on the Batman suit are really nice. The Robin vest material is just fantastic and, feels very familiar. The heads themselves, while not squishy, can't have everything, really do retain the original charm of the characters. Sometimes when there's straight reproductions, something gets lost in the adaptation and there's just something missing of the sculpt. It's not quite there. There's an aloofness to it. You know what it's supposed to be. And I'm pleased to announce that with these first three figures at least, there's none of that present here. It doesn't take you out of the moment. It looks and feels like it's a vintage Mego. And of course, they went with a very interesting decision to replicate the original paper stickers, the thing that was gone in the afternoon. And, people were back and forth about it, but I can't imagine these without paper stickers. And I'm glad they stuck to their guns because, again, it's a lot easier to pre-print that on a suit, but I personally think that would take you out of the moment. Now, the one thing that Mego did not redo is the original Type 1 body, which these figures are definitely supposed to be Type 1 Mego figures, and there was some people who opined for the Type 1. Now, me personally, it's like the cassette tape. I loved it. I certainly played with it a lot, but I don't super miss it. Mego has provided us with, I believe, is a second version of their bandless body. It looks completely different to the ones I've had before. It has the same issue that a few Mego figures have, where I don't know if it's in the dressing or in the packaging, but sometimes their arms get twisted. I didn't do anything to these figures. I just, jiggled them a little bit when I started, and they're fine. You don't have to do any crazy steps. Just make sure your first attempt at posing is done with some conscientious thought. Some folks have pointed out that the hands are slightly different on these. These hands, to me, look like they were based off of Mego's 12-inch superhero hands, which I always liked as a kid. Now, that doesn't really bother me too much, especially with two characters in gloves. It's not that noticeable. But, I understand if some folks would have liked to have seen the classic Mego hand. I get it. For me, the goodwill of the bandless body makes that just completely acceptable. Also, the use of Velcro has been noticed, and yeah, I get it. People would have loved to have seen little snaps. Fortunately, on the Batman and Superman, the Velcro is very easily hidden by the cape. And I only noticed it now on the Robin, so I'd say that gets a pass. Speaking of Robin, this is, of course, the removable mask version from the early waves of World's Greatest Superheroes. This is something I did not have as a kid. The Robin mask, of course, was problematic in the early 70s. Kids kept losing it. And Mego made a change of, just molding the mask onto Robin, famously. Now, this is the part that's not exactly bang on, but bear with me. The original fabric that Mego used to produce the Robin mask was using some materials they were also using for doll raincoats, I believe. And I'm not sure how easy it is to find that kind of material, but I hope I don't shatter anyone's thoughts of me here, but I want to point out and say the original Mego Robin mask, not that well made. Kinda cheap. So, in one respect, this new material, which, by the way, looks like they cut it exactly faithfully to the original, is a higher quality version of the original. You don't hear that often. It doesn't happen often. So yeah, it doesn't have that same shiny texture, but it is a very faithful reproduction in other regards. Turning over to Batman, he also is a removable cowl version of Batman. That was the original Mego World's Greatest Superheroes Batman. It lasted a little longer than Robin, but eventually, Mego did the molded head Batman as well, and that's my childhood Batman. They've done a really nice job of reproducing the cowl. Doing a soft removable cowl is very difficult. Just look at Hasbro did a Batman that was kind of ridiculous. It seems like a simple thing, but it's actually quite an art form. This is a pretty faithful reproduction. The feel of it, for certain, feels a lot like it. Mine had a little ding in the back, probably just exposed to heat. But it's a very minor thing, and it doesn't detract from the enjoyment of this figure in any way. So there you have it, folks. The anniversary Mego World's Greatest Superheroes. At least the first three. Aquaman apparently on his way. Now, these are just starting to come out, and they're popping up at Walmarts across the country, usually in the electronics section, the adult collectibles. But it's pretty amazing how many of these figures have been showing up. So it looks like it's going to be a really wide berth. They're also slated to begin at Meijer, and there's already e-tailers and retailers with them. We do Entertainment Earth here. It's one of our sponsors, but there's no end of good suppliers. Mego has Amazon, and there's Frank Wojo from Absolutely Retro. I believe there's Zolo World and ZLC Collectibles. There's a lot of good options out there, and if you ask in Mego Mania or at the Mego Museum, people will tell you who's good. Now, if you're Canadian and you're wondering, these are coming to Canada. I've had that confirmed, and we've even seen they're going to add a little safety warning for Canada. They will likely hit our shores by January 2023, so do not panic. Do not have FOMO. We will be getting them as well. I was fortunate enough to have a friend in the States help me out. He bought a second set. It's Kevin Fiore from Mego Ambassadors, and I thank him very much. And I've noticed some people kind of getting upset about scalpers picking up stuff, and I don't like that practice either. But not everyone's a scalper, and some people have two sets in their shopping cart because they're guys like Kevin who helped out a friend. And I want to pay it forward. With the announcements of these popping up everywhere, I'm beginning to think that we might have a year where everyone finds Mego at retail. Wouldn't that be a nice Christmas? Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this review. Thank you very much for watching. If you're new to the channel, please consider hitting like and subscribe. I do this every week. And like I mentioned before, if you're trying to find these figures, try and go to, either Mego Mania or Mego Ambassadors Facebook groups. You can also visit us at the Mego Museum forums, and maybe some folks can help some other folks out. That's really what you're supposed to do as a collector. Also, please let me know your thoughts on these reproductions. Will you be picking them up? Is there a reason you don't want to pick them up? Let me know. I'm always interested in your take. That's all for now. Be well, and as always, buy what you like. Cheers.